on your cheek. You ever get that feel that you can't shift the tide that sticks around like summits in your teeth? Are there some aces up your sleeve? Have you no idea that you're in deep? I dreamt about you nearly every night this week. How many secrets can you keep? 'Cause there's this tune I found that makes me think of you somehow, and I play it on repeat until I fall asleep, spilling drinks on my settee. Do I wanna know if this feeling flows both ways? Sorta hoping that you'd stay. We both know that the nights were mainly made for saying things that you can't say tomorrow day. Crawling back to you, never thought I'd call and run. You're like you, 'cause I always do. Maybe I'm too busy being lost to fall for right you. Now I'm going through, crawling back to you.
Welcome, 12th man, 12th lady, and Hawks Nation around the world. Yes, this is the 12 for 12 show for all of you Seahawks fans out there, and I'm your host, Paul Byer. We have a fantastic show tonight. Is that stretching it by any chance? I don't think so. I'm doing an all-star national panel of other NFL radio hosts that have chosen to join me tonight. I really am excited about this. We are going to discuss the NFL draft, obviously, which is coming up this Thursday, as well as the state of the league in general. We'll talk a little bit about their teams. We'll talk about our team. We'll talk about everybody's team. And the big stories going into as the quote-unquote 2014 season really starts to get interesting now that we're going to find out who's going to be playing for whom. The gentlemen will be joining me shortly, just after 7:15. But before we get to that, let me introduce you to a couple of the gentlemen that are going to be joining me this evening. First of all, from the New York Jets, Talk Jets Radio, Dennis Agapito. I hope I'm saying that right. He does a show called it's Talk Jets Radio with Dennis and Tyson, and that's on Blog Talk Radio as well. It's Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern. So for all of us over here on the West Coast, that's 5 o'clock. If you got to use the old numbers there. I'll give you all their contact information as well a little later on the show, but just for introduction's sake, let's keep going here. With the Green Bay Packers, Jacob Westendorf. He's going to be joining us. He's does on a show called From the Benches. That's part of the Packers Radio Network. And then lastly, Chase Ruttig from the Raiders Just Blog Baby, which I think might be the best name of the group. I really like that one. Obviously a play on Just Win Baby, the famous Al Davis mantra. All those gentlemen will be joining me tonight on the panel for the majority of the show. But before we get down there, we got a couple things to discuss. Today was kind of a no-news day other than finding out that our good friend Cam Chancellor did indeed have surgery. The Seahawks confirmed that. Both John Schneider and Pete Carroll held their pre-draft press conference, which is on 12for12s.com. You can check that out on my website. Also, you can get an idea from them on what they're thinking about for the draft, which obviously they don't give out much information, just a lot of philosophy stuff. And that's really the only news. And the topics otherwise tonight are going to be all 12 for 12s. We are going to do a quick commentary, and I do have that prepared for you, so I'm excited to get into that. I would just, again, like to remind everybody some of the unique things that we're trying to do here with the show. The follower base on Twitter, I've also started a Facebook page this last weekend, so find us on there, 12 for 12s Radio. Again, on the Twitter, that's at PBizzle. I know everybody pretty much knows that, PBIZZEL. A couple of key goals to try to get to. We're going to strive to get to that 12,012 followers by the start of the season, September 4th, the Thursday kickoff game here at the Clink versus the old Green Bay Packers. I'm sure Jacob's going to have some words for us on that. Obviously, 12for12s.com is doing fantastic, so thanks to everybody that's visiting us on a consistent basis. The YouTube page where I have all of the interviews, commentaries all plugged in there from each show. Appreciate the traffic to this point. I'll obviously have this show on there as well. Keep visiting. If there's anything you'd like me to do better, please let me know. Other than that, let's just get this thing rolling. I'm excited to do this big show tonight. And before we do that and get to the commentary, which I call 7 times 32 equals the NFL Draft, let's just give a quick shout-out to one of our sponsors, TYJ Movement. If you haven't had a chance, check out all the great gear at tyjmovement.com. Their hip and stylish designs will dress you for every occasion. Do yourself the pleasure of joining up with the TYJ Movement at tyjmovement.com. And remember, use Paul20T to get 20% off of your order. I appreciate that, too. And I'm sure they will as well. All right, we mentioned Cam Chancellor having surgery. Oh, well, we'll have to talk about that at a later date. We don't really know much about it, but apparently he'll be fine. It was a labrum, similar to what had to happen with Percy Harvin last year. I think it's fair to say that Cam will be fine because he's going to have a lot of time to get back. But we'll keep an eye on this, and we'll report on it later. All righty, let's go ahead and get this opening commentary a little shorter than I normally do out of the way here before the gentlemen from around the country and other NFL teams join me. I called this 7 times 32 equals the NFL Draft. I think it's fair to say that this is the annual rite of passage for football prospects across the country that will become a reality beginning this Thursday evening at Radio City Music Hall in New York City with the beginning of the NFL Draft, the annual trip to Mecca, as per se. The fortunes of all will be initially forecasted by the NFL marketplace. It's teams, franchises. Now, when I say initially forecasted, by no means is the long-term fortune of any of these players going to be determined. Even with the NFLPA collective bargaining agreement restrictions on rookie pay scale, the individual's career payday will be decided by what they bring to the team when they actually get on the field. Players like Russell Wilson here locally, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, are all such players that have either work their way to big paydays or will work their way to big paydays. Obviously, Richard Sherman about to get paid any day now. You see, it's a guesstimate right now, but I remember the Ryan Leaf coming out and everybody talking about whether Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf was the right guy. I mean, boy, we all know what happened to Ryan Leaf. And Peyton Manning, well, he's a legend. If these prospective NFLers decide to only bring their A games to the big lights of the draft, well, that means basically squat. They had better be thinking about how they'll work to be the best they can be as a professional. Players like Russell Wilson and Tom Brady with the Patriots are obviously easy shouldas looking back. NFL teams stayed away because they were looking at the sizzle of the player in college and their career, as opposed to maybe some of the meat on the bone. The true merit of someone is always based on how hard they work, but also how much they improve. As good as you can be in the draft, based on what the paper says, the history books will only remember those players taken who approach their careers with a first-round mentality. I expect this year's draft to be extremely fun to watch. I mean, heck, obviously we're football nerds here, but there's going to be a lot of action. I think more so with the deepness of it. There's so much, especially the top 10. The top 10 players are, I think, franchise players, really. And that rarely happens when you have that many. And I think there's a lot more than that, too, in this draft. There's just a lot of great talent across the board. The wide receiver class is so deep, it's almost not even worth talking about. But for many, I think the lights and the sounds may be what this day ends up being all about. I, on the other hand, look forward to seeing those diamonds with the rough edges. I like to see the ones that are going to be a little dirt behind the rim there, as opposed to some of the shiny objects that we're going to be thrown at. I mean, obviously, we're already seeing it with whether it's the Johnny Manziel show, which basically is 9 to 5. It makes RG3 and the coverage he gets from ESPN almost look, I don't know, minor league-ish. But that's the point. It's every year the media is trying to find their little gemstone that they can rub and say and call their own. But that's not what playing in the NFL and being a career impacting player in the NFL is all about. You can become a diamond, but you don't have to have that look right off the bat. There will be plenty of third-rounders, lower-level selections who become stars. Taking nothing away from those first and second-rounder guys, I love the draft for the magic that takes place in the later rounds. So grab your favorite beverage, get ready to officially kick off the 2014 football season. There will be a lot of shine to see on Thursday. Do yourself a favor, check out the dusty stuff too, though. It may make you a far better fan in the long run. I expect the Hawks to find a few of these gems this year. It's nearly impossible to project it, but witnessing will be enough for this amateur pundit. I trust in the Schneid. I trust in Pete to get their job done. It'll be another wild ride. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We're going to come back with our panel. Expect most of them to be here by now, but they will shortly. Other than that, just another quick shout-out to the rest of the double overtime team here. Remember, tune in every Monday and Wednesday to hear Tim Gardner, Barry Roy, and myself, Paul Beyer, as we talk national sports stories and obviously hit with the detail of all the local Seattle scene. We specialize in friendly debate with a bit of humor. Obviously, that's my ballpark. But all of us bring our strengths to the table. Don't miss an episode. Listen live on our Double Overtime blog, talk radio channel, and subscribe. Again, that's every Monday, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. I know we're getting into the Eastern Pacific because I got these guys from all over the country coming on tonight. Also, tune in on Thursdays for TJ McHenry's Sports Nerd Show, as well as Friday with the Ungaros, Adam Ungaro, and their Fourth and Short, which is a fantastic show. So check that out. Obviously, tune in. Since you're already tuning in, but tune in every Tuesday for my show. You might as well, right? 12 for 12. It's all about the Seahawks. 12 topics for the 12th man. But we're going to get back here in just a second, take a quick break, be here with the rest of the panel. Looking forward to this. And, again, thanks for everyone for joining us tonight on 12 for 12s with your host, Paul Beyer. Let's give Norb Kawili win-win-win a play, and obviously we'll go national after that.
With the fight, he's taking control. The one that we trust. The name is Russell Wilson, and he's dangerous. We're bigger, faster, stronger, louder than yours. We want the ball, hell yeah, we're gonna score. Hold on to the rock, cause the temperature is hot. You know the 12th man will be rocking the night. Who's gonna hit ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna outrun ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna blitz ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? Win. Who's gonna sack ya? The Seahawks. Who's coming at ya? The Seahawks. Who's gonna smack ya? The Seahawks. What's important now? The best. This year we're gonna win the NFC West. We running the ball, we setting the tone. He's Marshawn Lynch, what we call him beast mode. Defense, it's a temple of doom. Before you're going down, there's a legion of boom. First down, move the teams, now we're taking you out. Team up, go hot, bring it to the high. The Seahawks, gonna outrun ya. The Seahawks, who's gonna blitz ya? The Seahawks, what's important now? Win, who's gonna sack ya? The Seahawks.
All right, we are back. This is 12 for 12, your host, Paul Beyer. I am now joined by the National Roundtable. National Roundtable sounds like a pizza chain, but that's okay. I am now joined by our couple of great team radio hosts like myself here on Blog Talk Network. And, again, I'm real excited to have these guys on tonight. First, let me introduce them. Dennis from the New York Jets. He is on with this show with Tyson called the Talk Jets Radio. Also, Jacob from the benches at the Packers on the Packers Radio Network, on Blog Talk Radio as well, Jacob Westendorf. And then finally, Chase Ruttig of Raiders Just Blog Baby. So we got a nice gambit of the coast and little middle America. Gary is not here from Chicago as of yet. He might come later. We'll see. Probably maybe got scared of the cheesehead that we have in our midst. So we'll talk about that as we go. But, hey, fellas, thank you again for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Paul.
All right, well, we're going to go in order. I know we talked about this previously. Dennis, you're first, and then Jacob, then Chase. I'll ask a question. We'll take it from there, and I'll kind of round it out. But if anybody wants to cut someone off, make sure you announce yourself, and we'll take it from there. But other than obviously being thankful for you being here, why don't you take a minute to introduce our audience and hopefully some of the national people that are now tuning in to yourself. Tell them about what you do, your show, and a little bit about your passion for your team. And start with you, Dennis.
Well, my name is Dennis Agapito, and I'm currently on the Blog Talk system co-hosting a show called Let's Talk Jets with Dennis and Tyson. My co-host, Tyson Roush, also a passionate Jets fan. I'm a season ticket holder. I do some blogging on the Jet Setter, which is my co-host Tyson's site. I've been blogging for 2 years. I got my start in the radio biz on this show called Green Zone Radio, which is actually hosted by a big Jets fan from England. And I was able to cover some events via him, whether it be post-game at actual Jet games in the locker room. I flew out to Jets West, which is a private practice held by then quarterback Mark Sanchez. So then I've been blogging on the team for a couple of years. So I have a very good background with the team growing up and doing the blogging as well.
Awesome. Jacob?
Yeah, my name is Jacob Westendorf. I'm actually from Illinois, but currently relocated in Green Bay. Started blogging with PackersTalk.com from Jersey Al, as he likes to be known as. Now I currently write for Packer Report, which is a Bill Huber publication, and started doing some stuff that was known now as From the Benches with Ross Uglum, who is a PackersTalk.com writer as well, and just really interested in the industry. Trying to get my mark on the radio biz.
Awesome. Chase?
Yeah, I'm Chase Ruttig. I'm the editor of JustBlogBaby.com. I'm fan side of Oakland Raiders blog. We are just really Oakland Raiders blog with a pretty decent following of Raiders fans, just bringing all the Oakland Raider news and National Football League news that pertains to Oakland Raiders each day, as well as our podcast, the Just Blog Baby podcast, coming to you live on Fridays at noon. So check that out either on Blog Talk Radio or on iTunes. Just come out if you like the Oakland Raiders, the AFC West, or just anything NFL. We have everything really for people if they're looking for anything.
Well, thank you guys for saying that. And, again, for our national audience that might not be familiar with myself that's listening in tonight, my name's Paul Byer. I started up in this radio biz literally from a tweet. Somebody thought what I said was funny, and they said, hey, why don't you come on and be a panel member? Next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I got my own radio show talking about the Seahawks. Call it 12 for 12. Very simple. We are obviously known for our 12th man here. I do a weekly show called 12 Topics for the 12th Man. I started up a website called 12for12s.com. I do original publishing on there as well and content, but it's all about being a passionate fan and starting to really kind of enjoy doing this radio stuff as well. So I can hear that in all of your voices and talking about your track records as well, and I think that's what's cool about what we're doing tonight and getting together, just sharing with one another kind of our overall feelings, not only just about our teams, but talking about the league that we probably love watching every Sunday in the fall. So why don't we get started here? And I want to kind of start going back with the closeout of 2013. And I think what it's important to know is, again, we got a national audience here tonight. Why don't we start with you, Dennis, again, and we'll go after Dennis is done, Jacob, and then Chase. Give a quick synopsis of the good and the bad of your teams in 2013 in the season, and then why don't you give us one thought about what must change going forward? Dennis?
Well, I think I think the good thing about the Jets was that, a lot of the so-called experts had the Jets being one of the worst teams in the league heading into 2013. And they were actually 5-4 going into their bye week and were in a position to make the playoffs, kind of fell out of it towards the end there, did finish strong. The defense has always been stout under Rex Ryan. They have some good young players, including Defensive Rookie of the Year, Sheldon Richardson. So you can always look for a Rex Ryan team to have a stout defense. On the bad side, you had Geno Smith, a rookie. You had his growing pains. They had a 3-game downturn there where Geno Smith looked like he never saw a football in his life. You saw some flashes. Too many turnovers by him. The Jets were minus 14 in turnovers and still managed to pull an 8-8 record. How they were even in the playoff race with a minus 14 turnover differential, I don't know. But the one thing they do need to get cleaned up is, besides the turnovers, is getting some more offensive weapons. You can't be 30th in the league in offense and think you're going to make the playoffs. They got to surround Geno Smith with some talent. He has another year in the system. They brought back the same coaching staff. Marty Morningwig is the offensive coordinator. So hopefully Geno Smith can take a step forward with some better talent around him and keep that defense off the field and give them a little bit of rest so they're not always out there put under tremendous pressure.
Jacob?
Yeah, the Packers, they had a season where, they started the season 5-2, and then the turning point of the year is what everybody knows now is collarbone gate here around Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone against the Chicago Bears and did not play until the last game of the season. And I got to say, I'm a little disappointed that the Bears guy is not here because wanted to remind him that Rodgers did return for, one final game of the regular season that happened to be in Chicago against the Bears. They had 87 yards for the crown. That was the title of my blog post the day after the game. They had to go 87 yards to win the division. And Aaron Rodgers found Randall Cobb deep down the field for a touchdown to put them into the playoffs, where, again, they met their old nemesis, the San Francisco 49ers. And, well, it kind of ended the same way every game against the 49ers does these days for the Packers. They weren't able to pull it out. Colin Kaepernick had a big run late in the fourth quarter of that game that set up the game-winning field goal. And the Packers ended up losing to end their season at 8-1 if you include the playoffs. Something that I think that could be good is obviously the offense and all of that. They score a lot of points when Aaron Rodgers is healthy, obviously. They had an emergence of a running game. The bad would be the defense overall. The safety play may have been the worst in the NFL. M.D. Jennings just wasn't cutting it as a starter, and Morgan Burnett regressed after a contract extension that he received, and then what needs to change going forward, I would say, again, the overall defense and health. Clay Matthews can't stay on the field for whatever reason may be. Seems like he always has an injury. And then they need to be able to stop mobile quarterbacks and improve their safety play because Colin Kaepernick has torn them to shreds the last 3 times they've played each other. So the Packers need to be able to play better defense against quarterbacks like that and keep their quarterback healthy because ultimately when Rodgers is healthy, they were a 6-3 football team, which is just as good as anyone else was, maybe other than the Seattle Seahawks at the time.
Chase?
The Oakland Raiders season was really one about deconstruction, as everyone may know, as Reggie McKenzie, after inheriting a team that lost a lot of those picks, Hugh Jackson gave up in the Carson Palmer trade, really shedded a lot of also the cap, and a lot of the players were making a lot of money, and took on about $60 million of dead space. And then obviously this offseason, as you've seen with the 2013 season, because of the fact that the Raiders wanted to build a team in the Reggie McKenzie mold, and obviously the Packers guest on us may know what Reggie McKenzie's mantra is going to be. The Raiders really were looking to change the regime and get away with a lot of the bad contracts, which didn't have a lot of depth. And when key players like Tyvon Branch got hurt, as well as rookies like DJ Hayden and Menelik Watson, their first 2 picks, not really getting to play a lot in the season, the Oakland Raiders really just broke down after sticking in it being the San Diego Chargers and also having a couple close games against some rivals in the AFC West, as well as in Week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts. They just really didn't have any of the balances go their way, as well as health, and the fact that they had all that dead cap space really resulted in a lost season. But right now it seems the change going forward is the Raiders really need to just add depth everywhere across the board. They've accomplished that in free agency, but next, obviously, is bringing in the rookies to learn from all of those veterans that Reggie McKenzie brought in during free agency.
It's funny because I feel like this is going to be the easy one for me because closing out 2013 was really kind of nice. obviously, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, so hey, yay for me. Other than that, talking about what are the good things, what's the winning recipe? Establish the run, don't turn the ball over, and play great defense and special teams. And that's really what Pete Carroll has brought here with his compete mantra. One thing I want to see us doing going forward is we need to be more consistent on offense. We had a lot of breakdowns offensively with our offensive line. Our 2 starting tackles were out for over 8 games, depending on whether you're talking about Bernard Giacomini, who's now with the Jets there. What do you say about that? And then, of course, Mr. Okung, Russell Okung. So, we've got some shake-up there. We need to make sure our depth comes back. I think this draft 2014 is extremely important for the Seahawks. And it's not necessarily about replacing key starters. It's more about bringing depth to this team that they lost a lot of in free agency. I mean, we had 3 starting defensive linemen go, depending on whether it's the Jags, who picked up 2 of them, or someone else. Of course, the Giants there locally in the New York area picked up one of our key defensive backs in Walter Thurman. I mentioned Bernard Giacomini and Paul McQuiston. He's now with the Cleveland Browns, and then both starters, and then Golden Tate going to Detroit. So it's tough when you lose that many players, and it happens to all winning teams. We all understand the parity in the NFL and how it's designed. If you win, you're going to lose players, especially when it's contract years for those guys. So in our case, we're having to build back that depth because we did have outstanding depth last year, and we're feeling that as Seahawks fans. We're witnessing it. So here we go. We now got to make sure our front office does its job. Now, going to our next topic of the night and really the off-season status. What I want to hear from you guys is, one, in the over this 56-day free agency period, has your team improved in the area that you just talked about, maybe being a hole? And if not, why? And how does that go into the draft being a vital piece in making sure your team gets better going forward?
Well, I guess we'll start with me. This is Dennis. And, first of all, the Jets, their general manager is someone that you probably know real well, Paul, John Idzik, who obviously was with the Seahawks, a couple of years ago before he came on to be the general manager of the Jets. And he brings that same kind of mantra, which is, competition-based, patient, methodical, let's not make panic decisions. So, that's really the way he's handled this offseason. See, last year was with John Idzik, it was really more about having an austere budget, being disciplined, trying to bring some youth in. The Jets had some salary cap issues, and now they're pretty good with their salary cap. So they've been able to bring in some free agents. They acquired Eric Decker to help out with that wide receiving core. Like I said, the Jets just simply on offense were not producing enough first downs, enough points. A rookie quarterback doesn't help, but when he's surrounded by probably one of the worst receiving cores and skill positions in the entire league, that doesn't really help. But Chris Ivory, he showed some flashes last year. He had a 4.6 per carry average. You talk about, it's funny, Paul, you talk about the winning formula. And a lot of Jets fans have criticized Rex Ryan for having that same formula. Run the ball, play stout defense, don't turn the ball over. But these are important things for the Jets moving forward. They did acquire Chris Johnson, like you talked about, Giacomini. But look, the Jets have 12 draft picks this year. And it's really going to come down to bringing in some young talent, having these guys learn behind some veterans. John Idzik did re-sign a lot of the Jet free agents that were kind of floating around out there. There are still some holes to fill, but he's going to take a look at his draft class, his 12 picks, and then he's going to go back into free agency and fill some spots that way. So I'm very pleased with the way the offseason has gone. It's the exact opposite of the way Mike Tannenbaum handled it. Trader Mike, he loved to be aggressive, but ultimately it cost him his job in the long run.
Definitely have a winner there with Mr. Idzik. Go ahead, Jacob.
Well, what we have with the Packers, obviously, it was mentioned earlier that I think Chase mentioned that the Raiders have the same mantra as the Packers, which is that draft and develop type of mantra that they have here in Green Bay. They draft players, they re-sign their own, and they sell them, go out and spend in unrestricted free agency. This offseason, they did that. They signed Julius Peppers, and then shortly after that, they signed LaTroy Guion from the Minnesota Vikings. So they've bolstered their defensive line / outside linebacker. I think what you're going to see in Green Bay next year is that Seattle Seahawks type defense. Mike McCarthy's talked about the multiple defense quite a bit, which is what Seattle employs. And perhaps most importantly of all, they re-signed Sam Shields which was a cornerback set to hit the free agent market. I believe they signed him 2 nights before free agency was set to open. So that's a big deal. They can keep that secondary intact. They don't necessarily have to add a corner early in the draft now. They can focus on the safety position and the front seven because they still have some holes in the front seven. When your inside linebackers are A.J. Hawk and Brad Jones, respectively, nothing against those guys, but A.J. Hawk's steady, and Brad Jones struggled a lot last year after suffering an ankle injury. So the Packers do have some needs at the linebacker position, even the outside linebacker position, because of the injuries to Clay Matthews and the lack of depth behind him. And as far as the decision makers go, you know, I know a lot of people up here get frustrated with Ted Thompson because of his lack of activity. You know, they see all the sexy moves with the Broncos adding like Aqib Talib and T.J. Ward, and then the Patriots get Darrelle Revis. And, you know, Dennis was just talking about the aggressiveness of Mike Tannenbaum, and that cost him his job. So, you know, it's not necessarily the best way to build a team going forward. Ted Thompson's going to build the team his way. He's going to have drafted players. He's going to pay them, maybe overpay them a little bit, but he's going to keep his own guys. I think the Packers fans should trust Ted Thompson, especially Mike McCarthy going forward. I know that, you know, I gained a lot of respect for him. Paul, I know you remember this as well as I do. The infamous play in Seattle, you know, Mike McCarthy wasn't making any excuses. He didn't blame the officials after the loss. That's the idea. That's the kind of guy I like to have as my head coach. One that has no excuses even after a loss where maybe he could have blamed the officials. But overall, I think the Packers are in good hands with Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy, and they've done some things to upgrade their defense, which is a big deal. Offensively, I know they lost James Jones. Jermichael Finley's status is up in the air, but as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they're not going to struggle on offense. They have a running game now. The offensive line was better last year. They still have Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. So I think the Packers offensively are fine. Defense, there's still room for improvement, but they have done some good things on the defensive side of the ball to address their needs going forward.
Chase?
The Oakland Raiders really, next step for their team is finding, like I said in my intro, the depth they sorely lacked it last season, as we saw. And with all that dead cap space, everyone really expected it. No one expected much of the Raiders, but the team did pretty well in defense early when they had the pieces they had in place, and they added veterans. And Jason Tucker was a great defensive coordinator, in my opinion, as is Dennis Allen, a great defensive head coach. And the next step is the Oakland Raiders, is, like I've said, just depth. They need to hit on over 50% of their draft picks, in my opinion. And I'd probably be expecting Reggie McKenzie to try to add more draft picks than he already has, because that's what the Oakland Raiders sorely need. Last year, obviously, the injuries of DJ Hayden and Menelik Watson really dampered a situation where the Oakland Raiders, I thought, had a pretty good draft class because I had high expectations for both players. I think DJ Hayden, when healthy, is going to be one of the better cornerbacks of the 2013 draft class. But right now, the Oakland Raiders, regardless of who they've brought in, it is still not enough. They're especially playing one of the in the toughest division of the AFC. The West Coast football next season is going to be extremely tough, and the Raiders play all the NFC West teams. I think the Oakland Raiders really need to be looking at bringing in rookies who can play right away and also have the potential to be starters for a long time, else this Oakland Raiders rebuild is going to have a hard time getting off the ground.
I think one thing that all of our teams share characteristically is I think we have strong GMs. Some of them coming under the Ron Wolf school of thought there in Packerville. But, you know, going back to what it means to the Seahawks and making sure we have decision makers like John Schneider here. I call him the Schneid. But our depth is obviously the issue, and we lost a lot of it with all those free agents. And going into camp, we're going to find out if we can replace that with some of these young players. We had a situation here where we redshirted, essentially. We called it redshirt kind of here, and that is we had a couple guys that were banged up from a 2013 class that didn't even play. They were just IR'd the whole year. Jesse Williams out of Alabama, nose tackle, and Therrell Simon out of LSU. Big cornerback, fits that mold of man press coverage like I'd say similar to Brendan Browner, who's obviously in New England now. We also had some guys on the IR for the entire year that had been playing the year before. They were part of that 2012 class. Greg Scruggs, defensive lineman, kind of in the mold, but a little bit more mobiler than a Red Bryant type. And then Anthony McCoy, who's a tight end out of USC, and he was really coming into his own in 2012, but he was out the entire season last year with a torn Achilles. Him and another outside sprint rusher, we call him our Leo here, Benson Mayawa. He's a guy not a lot of people know about, but he had a fantastic preseason last year, and he's really developed through this offseason. So the player personnel guys are very high on him, helping fill in that role. Obviously, our biggest job in this offseason was re-signing Michael Bennett, our star kind of one-year gamble guy out of Tampa Bay that came up here. We originally had drafted him. He had a fantastic year. He played huge dividends in the Super Bowl and the playoffs in general. Also, obviously, we have a very strong core group. Kind of, if you look back to those great Cowboys teams and the trio, the triplets, with Aikman and Irvin and Emmett, we have here Russell, Richard, and Earl. Those are our three big guys, and it's not saying Marshawn Lynch is kind of crazy, but that's what we do here because we're really about defense. But Russell's the leader on the offensive side. We have those guys under contract. We got Earl in an extension. We obviously need to get Richard his. We expect that any day now. Russell, we can't do anything for another year. So, right here, everything right now is kind of still fermenting because we need to see how this draft plays out and see how these guys do in the offseason in camp this summer. But overall, we still feel very solid about our team, and our player personnel guys have made some good decisions. Moving on to our next topic that we're going to discuss here, and this gets into we're going to start talking about the NFC, we're going to talk about the AFC, we're going to talk about the entire NFL and some of our own personal thoughts. And what I want to get to here, Dennis, is, what do you think the NFC team, player, etc., who might have made news, who's going to have the biggest impact on this conference going into 2014?
Well, I'm going to kind of give a broad pick a team here, and I'm actually looking at the St. Louis Rams, and here's why. They play in the toughest division in football. It's not even debatable. And, they got this haul from this Robert Griffin III trade. Now, Sam Bradford got banged up. There's still some question marks as to whether or not he's going to be the future for them. There's been rumors about them getting Johnny Manziel, but this year they have 11 or 12 picks. They have 2 first-round picks, including the second overall. They have a very good defense, considering that their offense was ranked 30th in the league. And let me tell you, Brian Schottenheimer is the offensive coordinator who used to be with the Jets, so it doesn't put much faith for me to him to turn that around. But, the Rams are an interesting story here because they have a lot of youth. They have a lot of talent. Their defense had 53 sacks last year. They got Chris Long, Robert Quinn. Can they be competitive in that division? And is the fact that they're in that division going to hold them out of a wild card spot? I mean, if they were playing in the AFC, they might be an automatic into the playoffs. But that's what I look at. The one team that I say, who can make a jump, take that next step, even in a difficult division? And it might very well be the St. Louis Rams. I'm not so sure if I like any other team especially in the NFC least, I'll call them. The winner of the division is going to the playoffs. The NFC North, and I'm sure that Jake is going to be happy to hear this, is going to be owned by Green Bay. I don't care. I'm sorry that Gary is not here. He probably would have argued with me about it. But I can't stand the Lions. I think they're just a mess. They never got their salary cap situation under control, and the Vikings are rebuilding. The NFC South, I think the Panthers are heading for a fall. Their wide receivers are a mess. Their secondary is a mess, and I just don't see them having enough resources to really put a competitive product on the field like they did last year. I think the Falcons are on the downside. And let me tell you something about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers real quick. John Idzik should really be arrested for what he pulled against the Buccaneers for trading Darrelle Revis. And the Buccaneers should be embarrassed that they gave up a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and $16 million for a player that they eventually cut after 1 year. I think if any other GM – I mean, I know Mark Dominic got fired, but if any other organization in this league had done that, it would have been mayhem within the fan base. Look, I know that the 49ers and the Seahawks last year basically played the Super Bowl in the NFC Championship game. I just look at the Rams as a team that maybe they can turn that corner and have some sort of impact upon this division. Keep an eye on them.
I agree with you on that. Jacob?
Well, Dennis, first of all, I got to say I agree with you on the Darrelle Revis trade. I still think that they what they tried to do was basically fit the player to their scheme instead of fitting the scheme to their player, and they kind of wasted Darrelle Revis. I know that there's a lot of talk about his decline. Pro Football Focus has him as one of the top corners in the league still. So, You're right. I think that if any other organization had done that, there'd been absolute mayhem. And the Bucks, they should be embarrassed. Like you said, their GM did get fired, but John Idzik deserves a lot of credit for pulling that trade off, and the Bucks deserve a lot of blame for not having it work. But what I'm going to talk about for our biggest offseason story, and it's going to be a little predictable here, but it's going to be the NFC North carousel, if you will. Julius Peppers, former Bear, now a Green Bay Packer. Jared Allen, former Viking, now a Chicago Bear. Willie Young, former Detroit Lion, now a Chicago Bear. And then the Bears added Lamar Houston in addition to that. And then national hero here in Green Bay, might have the key to the city at some point. Golden Tate is now a Detroit Lion as well. I think that the Packers have added, obviously, to their defense. The Bears, their run defense, if nothing else, should be better with the addition of Houston and Young. I think that division is going to be more competitive than people think. I do appreciate you thinking that the Packers are going to own that division. I tend to pick the best quarterback as well, and Aaron Rodgers is that in that division. So I do like the Packers still to reign supreme in that division as of now. But the NFC North is going to be interesting with all those crosstown, different players in different spaces where playing against teams they used to play against. Julius Peppers is going to have that chip on his shoulder because he did pretty much just get fired by the Chicago Bears. Sort of the same thing with Jared Allen. Willie Young was allowed to walk without much of a resistance from the Lions. I think that division is going to be very competitive. And I look at the rest of the NFC, I mean, like you said, the Seahawks and the 49ers, those are the two teams that everybody's chasing because I think you're right. That game was the Super Bowl. And I don't know that, I think it was Richard Sherman who said, kind of privately that they won the Super Bowl in the NFC Championship game. They just get to take the trophy home tonight before Super Bowl 40 yet. But I think that the NFC North is going to be fun to watch next season. Obviously, a lot of high-flying offenses. The Detroit Lions have, Calvin Johnson, obviously. Golden Tate's there now. That'll add a different dimension to their offense with Reggie Bush back there. Matt Stafford, maybe he'll be a little bit more consistent under Jim Caldwell. The Vikings, I've often said, are a quarterback away from being a scary offense. Greg Jennings, I know a lot of people here in Green Bay hate him, but he's still very good. Cordarrelle Patterson looks like a scary weapon going forward, and they still have the only Hall of Fame running back in the NFL right now in Adrian Peterson. The Bears, their offense was a lot better last season with Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. Mark Trestman made Josh McCown look good, got him a new job in Tampa Bay. And Green Bay's there, obviously, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. As I've said, their offense is as dynamic as anyone's can be, and they can actually run the ball now. So I like looking at the NFC North. I think those player movements on the defensive side of the ball to combat those offenses are going to be fun to watch going forward into next season and even beyond that. I think that ultimately it's the Packers division, but I don't think it'll be a walkover like some people may believe it could be.
I think it's funny that we're talking about the NFC North and their defense as being a problem. That's usually not the case. Chase, tell us about what you're thinking when it comes to the NFC.
I think the thing that made the news that you guys haven't touched on is Deshaun Jackson heading to the Washington football team. I won't say the Redskins. I honestly think that Deshaun Jackson going there and being cut from the Eagles for that gang ties thing and deciding to stay in the division really makes it interesting, especially when you think about the New York Giants trying to add some pieces, and the fact that the NFC East, as you guys like to say, is really just a crapshoot, a literal crapshoot of just poor football teams really trying to just be slightly less worse than each other. And the addition of Deshaun Jackson to Washington really gives Robert Griffin III an option that will really help him after having that sophomore slump. And I think that having that really makes Deshaun Jackson one of the players in the news who will have the biggest effect on the NFC, because Washington now maybe can consider themselves a playoff team thanks to the fact that after not having a first-round pick, they added someone, Deshaun Jackson, who is arguably the biggest impact offensive free agent of the 2014 class.
I didn't want to talk about my division. I really wanted to kind of stretch outside the box, and I actually jumped over to that NFC East as well. And I'll tell you what, I think Chip Kelly's doing some pretty interesting things there in Philadelphia. And the Eagles, I think they're really the toast of that division. I mean, the Redskins have an opportunity to turn that coin over with RG3 in his third year now, having a full year of rehabilitation on his knee, getting that stronger. I think we probably would all sit here and say, if you watch that first Monday night game out of the starting gate, he was not himself, and he really didn't play like himself for probably at least halfway through the year. whether or not he's someone that can adjust now that he's got a new coach, and the fact that maybe he isn't all about this ego that's kind of being created around him. I hope that's not the case. He seemed like a good guy to me. But, the Eagles are a team that if Chip Kelly can really keep this thing running, and it seemed like they got stronger as the year went on, they obviously need help on the defensive side of the ball. But really, that's an interesting team, I think. Even though they lost to Sean Jackson, that's a team that really got a lot of its key pieces back. I also looked at, thinking of the local flair here, the NFC West, the 49ers, I think, have lost some of their shine. And what I mean by that is they're replacing essentially their almost entire defensive backfield. Dante Whitner went to Cleveland. You got this Alden Smith saga going on. Who knows what airport he's in now, yelling bomb? I don't know. But then you've got a team like the Rams, and I'll tell you what, I can't agree with you enough, Dennis. The Rams are a team that I am just flat out scared of right now because having 2 picks inside the top 13, second and 13th pick overall, wow. I mean, and Jeff Fisher is a guy that knows what he's doing. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and just going to make, I think, that NFC West just that much better. Let's flip it over to the AFC. Now we got 2 NFC, 2 AFC guys on this panel, which I like. So, Dennis, why don't you tell us what you're thinking when it comes to the AFC?
Well, guys, I hate to be a homer, but I'm going to be. It would be easy for me to say that the Houston Texans could have kind of a Kansas City Chiefs kind of rebound. But, I'm going to go – I'm going to be a homer here. I'm going to stick with my New York Jets as the team that's going to surprise, and here's why. A lot of people still think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and I look at my team objectively. I know I have green and white glasses on sometimes, but right now I'm looking at them objectively, and I'm looking at the AFC playoff picture. I'm saying, as a wild card, I know New England's still the cream of the crop of the AFC East, so someone dethrones them. I'm still going to consider them the favorite to win the division, as much as I hate to say it. But I'm looking at the AFC right now, saying AFC South, who scares me? The AFC North, you have the Ravens and the Steelers, good teams. The Bungles, I mean, you don't know what you're going to get from them. They might win the division and lose in the first round of the playoffs again. The AFC West, I think Kansas City's heading for a little bit of a fall here. They lost some key pieces. Dwayne Bowe's kind of their only offensive player. Lost some guys off the line there. Kind of got off to that hot, cooled off. I wonder if that was more indicative of what the Chiefs really are. The Chargers do concern me. Phillip Rivers had a fantastic year. Sorry, Chase, I'm not really not that concerned about the Oakland Raiders. Oddly enough, I want to bring this up real quick, Paul. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but here's the Jets' schedule. Opening day, home against Oakland. Second week, at Green Bay. Third week, home against the Chicago Bears. So just so you know, I don't know whether they did that on purpose. I know the Bears representative isn't here. But, the Jets, I think, really have a chance to be in the hunt. I'm not saying they're going to definitely make it, but I think they're going to be hanging around enough to make some noise and open some people's eyes. And here's the last thing I'll bring up real quick about the AFC. Darrelle Revis. First and foremost, a lot of the beat reporters out here in New York said that, the Jets bungled the Darrelle Revis situation. I know this is complete fallacy. It was a done deal pretty much that he was going to the Patriots before he got cut by Tampa Bay. It never even rose to the level of John Idzik. I know this from some people within the organization. You talked about Darrelle Revis earlier with Jacob. Maybe 2009 and 10, you could argue that Darrelle Revis was one of the best defensive players in the NFL. You could have made a very strong argument for that. I think there's a guy named Richard Sherman that might argue that he's the best cornerback in the league. There's a guy named Patrick Peterson that might argue again, you can make an argument. You can make a strong argument that Darrelle Revis, I don't care what Pro Football Focus or any of these groups say, you can make a very strong argument that Darrelle Revis is not the best cornerback in the league anymore. And you know what? He's getting 20% more than the highest paid cornerback is in the league right now. And people want to say the Buccaneers didn't use him right. Well, then why did they bring in a coach who played a Tampa 2 defense after they gave up all those resources? If he was such a resource, they should have brought in a coach who played press man coverage and said, you know what, for the $4 million less he got from New England, we're going to keep him here because we gave up all these resources to bring him here, and we're going to use him correctly. So I call that the Nnamdi Asomugha excuse. They didn't use him right, and look what happened to Asomugha. I'm not saying that Darrelle Revis is going to take that big a slide, but you know what? He's not the same guy I saw 3 or 4 years ago, period.
Jacob.
Well, Dennis, I will, a little way too early preseason smack talk. I'll say that second game of the year, that's looking like a loss for your Jets, but no. But what I will say real quickly is I'm going to go to that. The AFC team that I think, it's not really a jump because they were in the AFC Championship game, and I'm certainly not going to argue that there's a cornerback better than Richard Sherman. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear earlier. Richard Sherman's the best. And I think he'll tell us that, and I'll tell you that, and I think everyone in the world should be telling you that. But I do
His
think
mom
that,
probably will too.
Oh, absolutely. The Denver Broncos obviously were the team in the news quite a bit. They signed T.J. Ward, they signed Aqib Talib, they signed DeMarcus Ware. But I do think that while Darrelle Revis, I agree, is not the same player he was in 2009, 2010, he's still a top echelon corner in my opinion. I don't think he's better than Sherman, but I do think that he is up in that, maybe that stratosphere right below where Richard Sherman is. And I think that the Patriots' defense is going to be better for it. Talib could never stay on the field, and that was a big deal for them. You saw their defense completely change when Talib wasn't on the field. They were kind of hanging in there with Denver. Talib gets hurt. Denver runs roughshod all over the Patriots and go to the Super Bowl before they get ran roughshod by the Seattle Seahawks. So I like the Patriots' move of picking up Darrelle Revis, and I think a small, underrated move they just made the other day. They got Will Smith, again, as kind of a situational pass rusher type. I do like that move for them as well. I'm not a big guy that likes to give the Patriots credit because I think that ESPN does enough of that. I don't think that it's possible, according to ESPN, for them to make a bad move. They're trading for guys like Chad Ochocinco and Albert Hainsworth, and nobody on ESPN talks about that. They just talk about the genius of Belichick and doing all this when reality is the Patriots haven't won a Super Bowl in a decade. But I do think they did make a good move with Revis. One other move that I think is possible, and you kind of alluded to it, was this kind of is unpopular, but I do think that if the Houston Texans can find a way to secure Johnny Manziel, maybe not over Clowney at number one, but if they can move down a couple spots and pick him up there, I think the Texans were a good enough defense last year. They were 31st in points scored. I think Manziel is the quarterback with the most potential to succeed in the NFL next season. I like him quite a bit with Bill O'Brien as his coach. I think the Texans in that division, Indianapolis, I know they won quite a few games. They went to the second round of the playoffs, but did you ever watch them and you were like, yeah, that team is really, really good? Paul, maybe you did because they beat the Seahawks. But reality was they had just as many bad losses as they had impressive wins. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they can't even fill their own stadium, so I don't think they're any good either. I don't know that there's a whole lot there. I know Gus Bradley probably will do good things there, but for now it's probably another year away. And then after that, the Tennessee Titans, they're stuck with Jake Locker for one more year, and I don't think Locker's any good. So if the Texans can figure out the quarterback spot, and if they figure that out with Manziel, I think that could be a team that makes a jump next season.
Chase?
I think the biggest story, obviously, is like you guys have ranted about for the last couple of minutes, is Darrelle Revis going to the New England Patriots and really revitalizing a boring AFC East. The AFC East is boring. No offense to the Jets radio host, but it is so darn boring watching the Patriots whoop everybody in the AFC East recently. And even this year, it looks like now again the New England Patriots will be back to being one of the highest seeds come the AFC playoffs. And now maybe trying to challenge Peyton Manning with Darrelle Revis. There's even more of that juice in the New England Patriots-Denver Broncos rivalry. And without the New England Patriots, the AFC would really just be the conference that's waiting for the winner of the Seahawks and 49ers to lose in the Super Bowl.
I think obviously we could beat the dead horse with the Broncos and their additions. I think we've kind of alluded to good GM management, and what they have chosen to do is bet the odds and bet the farm on Peyton Manning and his 2 years left maybe in the NFL, if that. And, their contract and their cap scenario is going to be very Cowboy-like quickly after getting Talib and DeMarcus Ware. So, but not to beat that, I'll go and take a look at a different team. I'll tell you what, I got to tell you, when the Cleveland Browns traded Trent Richardson, I really thought that was just the worst deal ever. And then after looking at how it kind of worked out, even though Billy Hoyer got hurt through the year, I think this is a team with the draft picks they have from that trade. I'll tell you, I think the Cleveland Browns are close. They got Carlos Dansby, Dante Whitner. They filled some holes on the defensive side. Their defense was already kind of dynamic. They have, I think, a very good special teams group. But if they can fill some holes at offense, they obviously need to get a running back. I think the Cleveland Browns could be a surprise and a story this year. I will say this. The Jags, you mentioned that earlier. I'll tell you, the Jags, I think, are going to be better. And I'm not saying they're playoff caliber or anything, but with the addition of Seahawk, Red Bryant, and Chris Clemens, that's a good side of and those are two defensive ends. One's going to play the 5 technique. The other one's going to play your sprint rush edge guy, Leo. Gus Bradley plays the same package that we had here in Seattle. So I think overall there are some interesting storylines, and the team that really, in my mind, is going to be a surprise is going to be Cleveland. And, again, that's just my thought. All right, let's talk about the entire NFL here. Let's get down to some of the different stories that people talk, whether it was Roger Goodell trying to change the rules, getting rid of the penalties, the kicks, the Super Bowl and cold weather cities. I want to get your guys' opinion. What's your thoughts of some of the off-season chatter that's been out there about the NFL in general?
Well, I guess I'll go first, since the city that was hosting the Super Bowl this year, the cold weather city, had a 60-degree day for the Super Bowl weekend, including the Super Bowl game, where you had people out there in short-sleeve shirts in this supposed cold weather city that was going to have a blizzard. Now, the NFL did dodge a bullet because it snowed 10 inches the next day here in New York. So, but they did get kind of fortunate. The one rule I guess you want to kind of touch on here is the adding the 2 teams to the playoffs, and I really don't like it. Here's why. And, Paul, I'm sure you remember this. A few years back, Seattle won the division at 7-9, played the 12-4 New Orleans Saints, and they actually ended up winning that game. I had no problem with the fact that New Orleans had to travel out and play the Seahawks. So winning your division, there should be some sort of prize or for winning your division. There should be some sort of goal for winning your division. Who's to say that your division wasn't so tough that you win it at 8-8 and you were really a 12-win team in the other division? So I do like that. I like the 2 teams buying for the bye week. I like that. What will happen is if you add these 2 teams, one from each division, is that you're going to have a lot of under 500 teams ending up making the playoffs. And they looked at the Cardinals and said, well, they were 10-6. I know that happens sometimes. You win 10 games. Look, the New England Patriots won 11 games one year and they didn't make the playoffs.
Yep.
So it happens, but it happens so infrequently. I don't think it's necessary to add another team. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if I'm the NFL, I'm just leaving it alone. As far as cold weather cities, look, take your shot, because how many times can I watch a Super Bowl in Tampa or in a dome? I kind of enjoyed it being here at MetLife.
Jacob.
Well, I think the adding 2 teams to the playoffs, it's nothing more than a money grab. I think it's, I'm sorry if I'm attributing this information to the wrong guy, but, Mike Freeman, I believe, from Bleacher Report once said, Roger Goodell would sell his firstborn son if it meant $1 more for the NFL, and that's all that I think this is. I don't necessarily have a problem. I agree with Dennis that, there should be some value to winning your division. I think what the NFL does on a year-to-year basis is they just kind of overreact to an outlier. This expanding the playoffs and changing division format was after Seattle won that playoff game. And when has that happened since? We haven't had a below 500 team in the playoffs since then, if I'm not wrong. So I think that what the NFL is doing there, talking about that, they're just trying to grab more money and reacting to an outlier there. I mean, think about it. A few years ago, the Jets played the Titans on a Monday Night Football game, and it was, no offense to the Jets guy, obviously, but it was one of the worst games I had watched all season. And that would
Me too.
Been, yeah, and that would have been a new playoff game. I mean, that was all that was. That would have been a new playoff game, and it would have been bad football for everybody to watch. As for Super Bowl in the cold weather, listen, I live in the city where the Ice Bowl was made famous. I was at the playoff game where the Packers played the 49ers and froze like crazy. They were calling it the Frozen Water Bowl up here. It didn't end up as cold as it was going to be, but the talk of how a Super Bowl can't be played in cold weather because the offense won't have the ability to play to its biggest advantage, I bet Vince Lombardi and George Halas and all these other guys that helped invent football and make it what it is, going all the way back to like Curly Lambeau and guys like that as well, they're rolling over in their grave listening to that crap. I think that the NFL, what makes the NFL great, it's not like basketball. It wasn't made to be played in ideal conditions. Baseball, if it rains, they don't play. Football was meant to be played in the elements. I was looking forward to a cold weather Super Bowl. I think it would have been a big advantage for the Seahawks because Peyton Manning doesn't have a strongish arm, for example, but that's what championship teams do. Championship teams win in unideal conditions, and that's what the Super Bowl would have to be. I'm all for it. Like Dennis said, I can only watch so many Super Bowls in Tampa or in a dome. Give me one at MetLife. Give me one. I don't think Lambeau could support it, so give me one at Soldier Field. Well, fix the field at Soldier Field, then give me one at Soldier. Give me one in another cold weather. Yeah, the mistake by the lake is what they call it, in addition to the city of Cleveland. So, it's a flying saucer dropped onto a spaceship is how we refer to it around here. But give me a Super Bowl in a cold weather city. I'll love it. I'll watch it. Give me some power football, some good defense, which sounds weird being a Packers fan now, which has been aired out for the last 10 years or so, maybe longer than that. But I'm all for a Super Bowl in the cold weather. The most iconic game in NFL history arguably is the Ice Bowl. Why? Because it was played in freezing cold. It tests the will of men as well as the skill of men. I'm all for Super Bowls in the cold weather. Leave the playoffs alone and leave the TATs in because there's a game that – I don't remember who was playing. The Jacksonville Jaguars are playing the New Orleans Saints, and I know this is an exception to the next 50 gajillion extra points, but they had that crazy Hail Mary lateral-type play, scored the touchdown, and missed the extra point. There's still an execution involved in that. I think leave the extra point alone. Like Dennis said, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Chase.
Well, first of all, I'm from Canada, and more specifically Saskatchewan, Canada, so listening to all you Americans talk about the cold made me laugh a little bit. You guys, the Grey Cup was in Regina, Saskatchewan this year, a little bit outside my house, and you're talking about minus 40 Celsius, which is close to like minus 40 Fahrenheit in the metric scale. It's cold, real cold. So the 60-degree Fahrenheit stuff made me a little bit chuckle when we're talking about a cold weather Super Bowl. As for changing stuff, Roger Goodell really likes to whore out the National Football League, so I'm not going to be surprised if we have more playoff teams. And, the Raiders finished 8-8 back-to-back a couple of years ago under Hugh Jackson and Tom Cable, and they could have made the playoffs those years. So I'm pretty sure fan bases in Oakland and fan bases that have had teams finish 8-8, 7-9, and more specifically the fan bases like the Arizona Cardinals who will finish 10-6 and miss the playoffs, those teams will definitely be happy to see the extra playoff teams in there. And, it's not a huge difference. I think it's one that's probably going to be an inevitable one because Roger Goodell wants more games, but adding more games to the regular season is just a PR move that is impossible to sell.
Yeah, I think we've all hit on some real interesting aspects to some of the questions I kind of threw out there regarding the NFL. And, when I think of Roger Goodell, I think of the big fat kid that would always play with the really tiny, little trinket in the corner in his mom's room and be like, oh, look at this. And then the next thing you know, it was broke. It's like the NFL is the 400-pound fat kid, and he's always reaching for stuff he shouldn't touch. And Roger Goodell can't help himself but and I don't know why. It just seems to me like he's a good guy, smart guy, but it's like, if it's worth 50 cents, if he can make 50 cents more, he's going to try to make 50 cents more instead of thinking about the ramifications for that. You mentioned the cold weather. I have no problem with the cold weather cities. The issue for me has been the fact that the Seahawks' 2 Super Bowl appearances were in Detroit and in New York City, and if it hadn't, and you're right, it was a perfect Sunday, but if that game had been 12 hours either or, it would have been a mess. It would have been a mess on so many different levels. I can't even think about it. Now, also, you think about what happened down there when your Packers, Jacob, went to Dallas in that Super Bowl when they beat the Steelers. That ice storm and that crazy freak weather that kind of enveloped the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then how that affected the fans. And that's the part of that I just, the stadium was all put together, Jerry's monstrosity down there, and he was trying to squeeze one extra seat in there, and the next thing you know, they got to kick down all those basically nosebleeds, and who got impacted? The fans. I think sometimes the NFL doesn't think through some of these thoughts they have. And if you're gonna, I've always said this: if you're gonna do something, do it right. And the NFL needs to practice that. They protect the shield so much, but sometimes they're just reaching, sometimes too much. Like you said, Dennis, going for the outlier. They need to stop that. Go with what works, but also, if you're going to do something different, do it the right way. The only thing I'll add to this this thought is, you talked about the extra points. I don't have a problem with them moving it back, but other than that, I think they shouldn't mess with it. If you're going to get rid of the kicker, think about getting rid of kickers, how that would change the game. Again, they're not even thinking about that impact of kickers and how many games have been won with a kicker. I mean, it's amazing to me that they're trying to mingle in this, and Roger Goodell needs to cool his jets. That's all. I guess I'll say that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're a little over on time. We've got 23 minutes left, so we're going to have to be a little quicker, guys, when we come back, if you don't mind. But we're going to take a quick little 30-second break, get a drink of water in you, and then we'll come right back. This is 12 for 12. This is your host, Paul Beyer. We're doing a special show with our panel, national panel of different radio hosts around the country. We'll be right back. I sure hope you guys enjoy all the Seahawks songs that I'm playing tonight for you. We have quite the fan base out here that likes the music. Well, let's get right back into this. This is 12 for 12, and your host, Paul Beyer. I'm joined with Dennis from the Jets. I got Jacob from the Packers and Chase from the Raiders tonight. Different radio shows. I'll let you give them all their information later so you guys know how to reach them and talk to them and listen to their shows. But continuing here, our topic list. The NFL draft, obviously, 2 days away here. I know the three of us or four of us are extremely excited about it, how it's going to impact our teams, we're football nerds. Let's just face the facts here. Who are the can't-miss players of this 2014 class that some are saying is the deepest in years? Dennis.
Well, first, let me say I do love the music. As long as you're not playing that Miami Dolphins theme, I'll listen to anything. Let me get into my player real quick is Sammy Watkins out of Clemson. I mean, it would be a dream if he fell to the Jets at 18. Just keep dreaming. I think he's a can't-miss prospect here. Mm-hmm. He's dynamic. He brings the speed. He brings everything. Good route running. He's everything you want in a wide receiver. He's 6'1". Well, he's not 6'3". Oh well, that's the only maybe downside of him. But he's a dynamic player. He can score every time he touches the ball.
Jacob.
Yeah, I got a hard time disagreeing with that. Sammy Watkins is an absolute stud. Seems like every year I fall in love with a guy that has no chance of reaching the Packers. In the past, it was like J.J. Watt, Fletcher Cox, other guys like that. This year it was Sammy Watkins. In addition to him, you've got Khalil Mack and Jadeveon Clowney, and then everybody always wants to know about the quarterback. And I'm probably one of the few banging on this drum, but I am a Johnny Manziel guy. I think that if he goes to the right situation, he'll be dynamic, he'll be a star. It's just got to be the right situation. It's not plug and play like Andrew Luck is. But so I got Mack, Clowney, Watkins, and then Manziel at the quarterback spot.
Can't-miss prospects, Jadeveon Clowney and Sammy Watkins, and that is it. 2 can't misses. The rest of them, you're going to have some good coaching and some luck along the way. But that is almost in every draft class. I just think Jadeveon Clowney and Sammy Watkins are just a different breed. They dominated the college ranks, both in South Carolina. I know Clowney's work ethic is a concern, but you can work around that, and you could definitely convince him to love football in a situation. Winning will be a key with him. But with Sammy Watkins, you saw that at Clemson. You can design an entire offense around him, and he'll just dominate no matter who is checking him. Perhaps in the NFL there might be some adjustment periods, but he's a guy who could be a real like A.J. Green or Calvin Johnson, who's drafted pretty high in the draft and just thrives and becomes a lockdown franchise number 1 wide receiver that everybody wishes they had on their team.
When you guys talk about Sammy Watkins, the irony is I was watching Mike Mayock a little earlier, and I swear to God, the guy's creaming his pants thinking about Sammy Watkins running routes. It's just hilarious listening to him. The guy that I like, and I'm glad you didn't mention him, is Aaron Donald from Pittsburgh. A guy, again, who's sometimes maybe slipping to the bottom half of the top 10, but as a defensive tackle, a mobile one. The guy, this is a 285-pound, 6'1" guy running a 4.6 240. I mean, that's not too shabby, folks. I played offensive line in college, and I wasn't even close to that. But this guy is a beast. He can play inside. He can play outside. He's a can't-miss guy, in my opinion. I mean, the easy answer, obviously, is like Jadeveon Clowney. But I think you're right. I think Sammy Watkins, all those guys we mentioned are all going to be absolute studs, and Aaron Donald's my guy. Don't forget about the offensive linemen, though. Jake Matthews, Greg Robinson, I think those are two studs as well. Against Matthews' heritage alone has got to be worth its weight in gold. All right, moving on to the next topic here, talking about the draft. Getting into your team now, what do you see your team doing with their first-round pick, and do you think it's going to resolve one of your biggest needs that we talked about earlier? Dennis?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's John Idzik, so look from the situation he comes from. I don't know. I mean, it's subjective what your biggest need is. John Idzik's going to – look, you try to marry the two. I like to use the guy's own words. And I've listened to John Idzik speak, and he says as far as best player available and need, you try to marry the two. And when it gets to 18, whatever the board looks like, he's going to take the best player who fills a need on his team because he has to get that player that gives him the best NFL career forward. That's what the draft is about. Now, Jet fans might scream at you that they need a cornerback and they need a tight end first. But that doesn't mean you'll reach for a guy who isn't worthy of the 18th overall pick if you end up picking there. So as far as will it resolve a need? Definitely. Will it be a tight end, a cornerback, a wide receiver? Not necessarily. If there's a good pass rusher on the board, I think that John is just going to take a very strong look at them, or maybe even possibly a safety. But I think the number one concern right here for the Jets on the defensive side of the ball is to get an edge rusher to go with that young defensive line and have clogging up the middle. And I think John Idzik will take a good hard look if there's somebody he likes at 18 at that position. But it will resolve a need.
You bet. Jacob?
Yeah, I agree with Dennis. You know, Ted Thompson is the same way as John Idzik. You know, a lot of people obviously like to say take the best player available, but it really is the best player available at a position of need. And the Packers' needs, they have a need at inside linebacker, they have a need at safety, and they have a need at wide receiver. I think that your guys there, you're talking about guys like C.J. Mosley or Ryan Shazier. I think they could decide between those two. Safety-wise, Deshaun Clinton-Dix, probably unlikely to get there, so you're talking Calvin Pryor, maybe Jimmy Ward or Dayon Buchanan if they like those guys enough. And then at the wide receiver position, I think the only guy that Ted Thompson would pick at 21 is Odell Beckham out of LSU. I know that a lot of people would say, well, the Packers need defense, but they did just lose James Jones. Jarrett Boykin showed flashes last year, but I don't know that he's able to be trusted, quote unquote. And then you've got Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb both up for new contracts going after next season, so they could need another receiver. And the idea of Jordy and Jarrett Boykin on the outside and then Cobb and or Beckham Jr. in the slot, I think that would rip teams to shreds. I think that the Packers are going to look at, so those five guys that I just gave you, one of those two safeties, I guess I gave you six. One of those three safeties, one of those two linebackers, and one of those, and Odell Beckham at wide receiver. But I think there's going to be a lot of trade-down scenarios for the Packers, but if they do stand pat at 21, I don't know that there's a big scenario where Packers fans are going to be disappointed on draft day. The only surprise pick I could maybe give in the first round is if Eric Ebron were to fall down. I think the Packers could take a long look at him with the Jermichael Finley situation. Andrew Corliss is the only proven tight end on the roster at the moment.
I hope I'm not wrong here, but now we're getting to our only team that's in the top five. Raiders at 5, right? So, Chase, who are you? Who do you think you're going to get there?
You know, this recent report with the Browns potentially drafting Johnny Manziel at the 4th pick. I know Mortensen reported that the Browns have told Manziel he'll go no lower than 4th to the Browns. Would maybe keep guys like Mack and Watkins in play. But I know it's boring, but I think we won't even be seeing someone on this panel with the 5th pick. We all know that last year Reggie McKenzie traded down to get DJ Hayden. And a lot of people, I know draft nicks really like the Reggie McKenzie trade down. I personally think the Raiders should stay at 5. They need elite talent as much as they need a lot of talent. And this draft is deep. I think if they stay in the top 15, that's fine. I think any player that comes to the Raiders in the top 15 picks would be an impact player. They're not going to go a quarterback. Whoever they're going to get is potentially going to be one of the rookies of the year because he's going to play a lot of downs. They're probably going to look for someone who's going to learn with a lot of their veterans. And who knows, I think the Oakland Raiders are going to be in a position to bring in an impact player, and because they're in a high draft position, they're going to hopefully hit on a lot of draft picks. I think Reggie McKenzie is really going to redeem himself after a season where last year a lot of people are panning him because of the bad injury like a DJ Hayden and Meadows watching.
Well, I'd be kidding you guys if I said that the Seahawks, if I didn't expect the Seahawks to trade out of the first round. It's going to be one of those boring days waiting and then seeing our team not even have a pick. at 32. And I expect it to be the Browns, the Texans, the Jags, or the Vikings. I think one of those teams is going to try to jump back into the first round and get a quarterback. I think the quarterbacks are going to drop in this draft. Not to take anything away from Johnny Manziel, but it's just I think that they're going to all drop because of the depth at so many different positions, skill, whether it's wide receiver or defensive line. There are some great talents there, and even offensive line. Offensive tackles is very deep. But overall, the guy I like, and if they kept that pick, or maybe even later, early second round, if they traded back, I like the Seahawks to take a right tackle. I like Morgan Moses out of Virginia a lot. And then two guys that Tom Cable are Raiders. Mr. Chase, you know who Tom Cable is. He's a fantastic offensive line coach here, and assistant head coach. But two guys that he has actually visited down at Tennessee, both tackles, is Jawan James, and if you tell me this name isn't the best for an offensive tackle, I don't know what is. Tiny Richardson. I mean, come on, that's a name born to an offensive tackle. But Tom Cable's real high on those two guys, so I could see either of those three being one of our picks in those first, second rounds, depending on how that trade goes. Okay, moving on to our next topic of this evening, and that is which team of all NFL teams do you believe they have to have a great draft in 2014, or it's going to be years to come before they start to play with the big boys again? Dennis?
Well, that's pretty simple. They all do. I mean, this is a simple question. They all do. They all do. Listen, tell me one team that isn't relying on the draft for something. You can't.
Right.
Or multiple areas. They all have to have a great draft, because you have the Miami Dolphins, okay, they had the third overall pick, Deion Jordan, did nothing. Their second-round pick, Jamar Taylor, had 3 tackles. They picked an offensive lineman who barely got into games, and our offensive line stunk in the third round. And they picked another defensive back who had 8 tackles all year long. You can't have 4 picks, one be the third overall pick, one in the second round, and 2 third rounds that give you that kind of production. No way. They all need to be successful in the draft to have success on the field.
Jacob.
Well, while I agree with Dennis, obviously all teams need to be successful. One team that I'm looking at specifically that may be a bit of a surprise is the Denver Broncos. One thing that we've talked about a little bit before, and I want to talk about it now, is, we're one Peyton Manning retirement away from a massive rebuild in Denver. I know they're all in with Peyton Manning, and they absolutely should be, because it's not very often, almost never, that a franchise quarterback becomes available in a free agent market. So, the Broncos had to attach everything that they had to Peyton Manning's wagon. But, going forward, you're looking at Von Miller's contract is up after this year. Both Thomas's, Demarius and Julius, their contracts are up. The money situation is odd. They may not be able to keep all of them, so I think that they need to add some quality talent at the end of the first round and at the end of all these other rounds to build their team going forward and at least have some resemblance of a competitive football team when Peyton Manning does finally decide to hang it up.
Chase.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a nice boring one to speed things up. I know we're getting short on time based on what we were given. I think, every team really needs to have a great draft in order to get better. But I think the teams with the multiple picks in the first round are the teams with the real opportunity that are really going to want to have a great draft in order to get better. The teams like Cleveland and St. Louis are the teams that are really hoping in divisions where they can really jump maybe into the range where they can be the second or third best team in the division. They're really going to be looking to hit with 2 superstars in the first round apiece, because those would be the 2 teams I would pick.
And I think not only are those 2 teams, but those 2 teams can get significantly better, which might even mean playoffs in both scenarios. I'll just say this. When I thought of this question, I was thinking of one in particular, and it was the Cowboys. They have, like we said, Denver is about to be in that scenario with the big contracts that they just got their hands on. But the Cowboys they're living in that. They have to get younger. They have to get rid of some of these contracts, even though DeMarcus Ware's no longer there. Jerry Jones has run that team literally into the ground, and it's a shame to see a team that's been so good in the NFL for so many years. Not that we're all Cowboys fans, because we're not, but it's tough to see that a once great franchise fall into mediocrity, literally. So we'll move on. And, hey, guys, just real quick, I'll say this side note. We are at 9 minutes, 40 seconds left, but we can go over. It'll just record for the podcast, so we can still go through all the topics, and I'll just make sure we say goodbye to everybody on the live part of this when we do get to the bottom of the hour here. So let's go ahead and get to our next topic, and this is a fun one because I wanted to get everyone's perspective about how you saw our team, and so I think this was kind of an interesting spin of switching teams. So I'd like Dennis to start this and give your perspective of each of the other teams represented on our panel.
No, I'll try to be quick, too. For the Chicago Bears, we want the good. Obviously, their offense, they were second in points scored last year. The bad is their defense. They were 30th in yards given up, and the ugly was they only had 30 sacks. Let's go on to the Packers. The good, Aaron Rodgers. The bad, their defense. The defense has consistently not really lived up to what their offense has done in any way. And the ugly would be backup quarterback. You better have a better plan at backup quarterback if you lose Aaron Rodgers for a few games. Oakland, the good, they have salary cap space. The bad is, did they just get free agents that were over 30? Was that a prerequisite to signing a free agent this year? And the ugly is, why did Reggie McKenzie not franchise Valdir or Houston, at least one of them, or keep both of them there? I thought they were good young players to build around. They were solid. And if you're going to go out and spend that kind of money, why didn't you spend it on them? I know Valdir wanted out of Oakland, but you know what? Franchise them. Sorry. A lot of guys don't like to be franchised. That's tough. That's the rules. As far as the Seahawks go, the good, hey, you're coming off a Super Bowl. You're playing with house money. The bad is, I'm just going to say, you're very reliant upon the run. If teams start catching up with you, Russell Wilson, he's a playmaker. He's very efficient. He's not going to put up wow numbers, but he's very efficient. He can make plays with his legs. But I wonder if, the rushing totals aren't there for him, if he can carry a team. And the ugly is, look, you're going to have to – you talk about Richard Sherman. You're talking about paying Russell Wilson. Eventually, you're going to have to – Russell Wilson is not going to be a song for you guys to pay for anymore. He's going to cost some more money. These guys are now becoming free agents, and you're going to start to get pressed against the salary cap.
Jacob.
Well, we'll start with the New York Jets. Obviously, Dennis, I think you kind of touched on it earlier. The good is they have a solid defense. I think they have a good coach in Rex Ryan, despite what some people may say. And they did overachieve last year. I was one of those, quote, experts that expected them to be a 4-12 kind of football team. The bad would be that, they have not a very good offense. I mean, Geno Smith, he goes back and forth. He's hot and cold. Now Michael Vick is there. Questions as to who the quarterback may be there. That could be a sticky situation going into training camp. And then the ugly, you've talked about this too, how they may have the worst offensive weaponry in all of football as far as wide receivers and tight ends sort of things go. So that's something they need to improve. When you have a quarterback, whether it's Geno Smith or Michael Vick, you got to put weapons around him. That's something that Ted Thompson's done a good job of here in Green Bay. It's what the Bears have done up in Chicago. They've got plenty of good things going for them. They just need to get some weapons on the outside. For the Chicago Bears, you mentioned it too. Their offense was a hell of a lot better last season than it's been in quite some time. They actually were competent on the offensive side of the ball, which isn't something I'm used to seeing. Bad, I'll say that that was the safety play. Chris Conte is a widely discussed issue that they have. Their safeties, obviously Conte was out of position on a play that effectively ended the Bears' season. So, that's not a good thing going for them. They signed M.D. Jennings. I know him very well. He's not any good. The most famous play he is for in Green Bay was a play that resulted in a touchdown for another team. And then ugly would be the last two games. They had two games. They had one against the Philadelphia Eagles. They got blown out on Sunday Night Football. And then they had a game at home against the Packers on their home turf to win the division, and they lost that game late as well. That can't be good for them, and it's got to be better going forward. The Oakland Raiders, I would say that their defense has improved. Dennis Allen's a good coach there. I know you've mentioned that, Chase. So that's a good thing for them going forward. Bad, the quarterback play wasn't as good, and they still, I don't know if Matt Schaub's the answer or not. That remains to be seen. And they have, like you said, that salary cap issue is gone, but they just don't have a whole lot of talent on the roster. And then ugly would be that free agent snafu with Roger Saffold. They had him, then they didn't have him, and then now they're stuck with Donald Penn, who is, in my opinion, at least mediocre. Then the Seahawks, well, there's not a whole lot of bad to say about the Seattle Seahawks. The good, obviously, they're a Super Bowl champion. They were the best team in football all season long. I don't know that there was much of a question about that at any point. The bad, I'll say, at times was the passing game. Russell Wilson's efficient, doesn't put up the lot of numbers, and I wonder if, if they can't run the ball and play great defense, can he win a game in a shootout kind of thing for you? I think he can. I just haven't seen it yet. Ugly, again, when you're a Super Bowl champion, there's not a whole lot there. I think the contract situation will be fine. John Schneider's a good GM. He learned from Ted Thompson. He knows how to manage the cap. So I'm going to go with the Brandon Browner PED thing. I guess that, that's kind of a cop-out because he's not even there anymore. but, you never want your team associated with performance-enhancing drugs. So I'll go with Browner on that. But overall, the Seahawks are, still the team to beat in the NFL, and they look like they could be for quite an extended period of time.
Jace, hit them up.
I'll try to do this rapid fire. Obviously, the New York Jets, anytime you're a Rex Ryan team, your good's probably going to be your defense. The bad for the Jets, I would say Geno Smith struggled as a rookie. He obviously was not the answer for them in getting to the playoffs, and you can't really expect much of a rookie quarterback from an unproven college like West Virginia. He just wasn't going to be the answer this year. And the ugly, I would say the New York Jets wide receiver situation was terrible. And just one little dig at Kellen Winslow and his synthetic marijuana and Vaseline. I know he might be gone from there, but that was pretty ugly. I think we can all say that. Switching over, we'll skip the Bears because there was a no-show there. We will go to the Packers, the good Aaron Rodgers, and I'll also even give some belated credit to Matt Flynn for keeping him alive after leaving Oakland. He really proved that he's just a great backup when he's in Green Bay. That was good for them, and they made the playoffs. Bad, obviously, their defense, and the fact that they maybe could have avoided having to play in the wild card against the 49ers if they just had a backup in place. I think they may be having to address that in the NFL draft. And the ugly, their secondary and missing Clay Matthews, their defense was very unpacker-esque last season, and if they want to become contenders, they'll have to do that. And as for the Seattle Seahawks, everything that's been said about the Seahawks can be said already. They're Super Bowl champions. Not really a lot of bad for me. And for the ugly, I will go with the Browner suspension because PEDs are PEDs, and cheating never is a good look. And that's about it for the wrap-up for me there.
Sounds like Harbaugh right there.
You never want to be compared to Jim Harbaugh.
I'm just kidding. All right, again, don't worry about the time, guys. We're doing fine there because we'll go over a little bit. But when it comes to the Jets, the first word I wrote down, overachieving. So I think a lot of our thoughts here about each other's teams is probably going to be pretty similar. The one thing I'd say about the Jets is I'm curious to see how that quarterback, and I don't want to say controversy because I know that they've said, Rex has come out and said, I think that Geno Smith is the starter, but I would not be surprised if Michael Vick ends up being the starter, and I just want to see how that, because I think Michael Vick still got stuff in the tank. Obviously, he likes throwing interceptions, but the guy's an amazing talent. He's physically just a very gifted person. Ground Rex, is that going to make a comeback with Bilal Powell and Chris Irie? It's going to be interesting. I think Rex is a good coach. He's an outstanding defensive coach, and that showed with what you guys put out there last year. Bears, I'll go ahead and skip them because we basically summed them up with their offense being everything they have. The Packers, I think you're 2 players away. I really do. I think you're 2 players away. Rodgers is, again, one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this league. Depending on what day we're talking about it, he could be number 1. Cobb is a shining star. He's electric with the ball. The way that they used him, moving him around the field is fantastic. They can get back and win a Super Bowl with their offense. It's what they do with their defense, and you've got to add the guy in the middle. I think, like you said, a strong safety or a free safety asset there, and then another linebacker or defensive end on the other side of the ball running that 3-4. They need to be able to put pressure on a pass rusher and, like you said, contain these new age running quarterbacks. They had that. Really, again, forgive me for not knowing your DB there, but he read the coverage correctly and should have had a pick in that game against the 49ers, and you guys would have won that game. And that's a shame because to have that, have that one play come down to it, and then allow Kaepernick to do what he did the rest of the way. But you guys are close. Now, get to the Raiders. Where do you start? I don't know what they're doing with Matt Schaub there. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think he's the answer. Not that I think Matt Schaub is a bad quarterback. I think he just happened to have a bad year, a very bad year, literally almost getting railroaded out of his home in the middle of the season. But the point is, I think what the Raiders are going to do there at the quarterback position, I think ultimately is going to define them, and they could answer that, I think, maybe in this draft. But there are such good players there that they need, especially on the line. I've got Jake Matthews going to them, but it could be another tackle. the Raiders are a team that needs to keep rebuilding, and hopefully Darren McFadden finally makes an appearance as a real solid NFL player or makes it through a season. But I think that the Raiders are just a team that needs to go about, and they got the right guy with Reggie McKenzie in there. Still, Mark Davis. Is Mark Davis going to get a haircut that's different other than that mop top? I mean, does anyone know that's not the 1960s anymore? It kills me. The guy could pay a lot of money to get rid of all those pictures on the internet of him. But Al Davis, to go from the cool Al Davis, even though evil emperor later in his years, but to Mark Davis, his son, it's like the Joker in the court. You know, his hair. He's got to get a haircut. Somebody work on that, Chase. I'm going to ask you for that. And then lastly, I'll just say I'm excited for Heidi game number 2 with the Jets and the Raiders playing again this year. But we'll go ahead and move on from there. Let's forecast 2014 here, guys. And what I want to do is talk about what factors do you think are keeping your team from being a Super Bowl champion? Basically, what are a couple of things that you think are the difference makers between your team being in the Super Bowl or not? Dennis?
Well, it really comes down to one guy. I know you're talking a little bit about Michael Vick. You know, Michael Vick I don't think he's had a complete season where he hasn't been injured. Last year only played in 7 games. Nick Foles came in and totally took over that offense. Look, Michael Vick is what he is at this point in time. He's a serviceable backup. And if Geno Smith is not out there playing and Michael Vick is, pack your bags, Rex Ryan, because you're out of there, and the Jets are drafting a quarterback in 2015. Here's the bottom line. Geno Smith has to get his completion percentage up above 60%. No Jet quarterback has had a completion percentage above 60% since Brett Favre was there. A little shout out there to Jacob. That's how long ago it's been since a Jet quarterback had a completion percentage over 60%. So Geno Smith playing in that West Coast offense, Morningwig, needs to get his completion percentage up. That will bring down his interceptions. He needs to control the ball. Geno Smith accounted for 25 of the Jets' 29 turnovers last year. So he's got to cut down the turnovers, move the team down the field a little bit more, field position, scoring points, let that defense pin their ears back, go after the quarterback. The Jets are built to play with a lead. They don't need a huge lead, but they're built to play with a lead. Number 7, Geno Smith, is the key to the Jets making it to the Super Bowl or not. If he takes a step forward after his rookie year, they got a chance to make it in the tournament, and anything can happen going from there. But if he stays where he is or regresses, pack your bags, everybody, because there's a whole new regime coming in here, and we're starting all over again.
Jacob, are the Packers going to be in the Super Bowl this year?
Oh, boy. I got a hard time saying that because I think that the Super Bowl still goes through Seattle, and I think we'll get a good look at what that may look like that first game of the season, which, Paul, I hope to talk to you again before that game starts. But
absolutely. You bet.
Yeah, so one thing I think that obviously needs to improve, we've all talked about it, it's the defense. And the Packers need more speed on their defense. They need better safety play next to Morgan Burnett. I think you're kind of stuck with that because of that contract extension. So you need a guy next to him. Is that Calvin Pryor in the first round? Is it Jimmy Ward or somebody later? I don't know yet. And they need linebacker play. You need a guy next to A.J. Hawk that can play and chase down some of these new age quarterbacks like we've mentioned. Offensively, just need to stay healthy. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, if you have a quarterback, then you're 2/3 of the way there. That's the way that this league is built. If the Packers can keep their quarterback healthy and improve on that defensive side of the ball, I think they really need that Julius Peppers move to pan out. They didn't really, in realistic fashion, spend a whole lot for him. It's just a $3.5 million cap hit, but they are relying on him to be a major contributor next season to that defense, getting after the passer. So I think they need that move to pan out. Then ultimately just keep guys healthy and then see if they can compete with Seattle up there in that Thunderdome, even though it's not really a dome.
Chase.
Yeah, I really cannot have to go out on a limb here and say the Oakland Raiders will not be winning or doing anything involving the Super Bowl this season. And it was just because the Raiders' schedule is just too difficult to even dream of the playoffs. I really like the moves Reggie McKenzie's made. I think lots of these players, he only has them on 2-year deals. They only have 2 years left in their career of real being productive. He proved last year that he can get guys like Tracy Porter, Mike Jenkins, and Charles Woodson to produce for him. And I think all of these guys he brought in on the defense will do the same. But the Oakland Raiders having to play the AFC West teams that all made the playoffs last season 6 times, then having to play the Seahawks and Niners and the Cardinals, it's just too much for a young team and a team that is going to be relying on Matt Schaub to do. I like the Matt Schaub thing. You guys have all been pissing on Matt Schaub in this podcast. I completely understand that. But I think Matt Schaub has proven he's one of the more productive quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 5 years. Last year, I feel the world fell out on him, but that Houston Texans team was bound to fail. It was just a nightmare of a situation. They really gutted the place, and he had nothing. And I think with some confidence, starting off next season in a positive direction is going to be huge for them. Their schedule has them playing the likes of the Jets, Texans, Dolphins, and Chargers before having to play the Cardinals. And I think only the Patriots in Week 3 is the game I would think would be a guaranteed type of loss situation. And I think the first 8 games of the Oakland Raiders season before they play the Seahawks are the important part of the year. And I think if they can beat the likes of the teams that they're playing in that stretch of the Jets, Texans, Patriots, Dolphins, Chargers, Cardinals, and Browns, and have a winning record before playing the Seahawks, maybe there'll be some belief and attempt to make a run. But other than that, I just don't see it happening. And I'm sorry to say it to the Jets host, I say the Raiders will win on the road in New York in Week 1. I think a team with veterans hungry to prove that they can restore a winning atmosphere in Oakland will get off on a quick start this year. I think the Raiders, before their bye, can have a real chance of going 3-1 after they go to London and play the Dolphins. Call me crazy.
Booyah. We got some fighting words there. I love it. All right. When it comes to the Hawks, hey, we won the Super Bowl, I know, but one thing that's very interesting about this team is the youth. We are one of the youngest teams last year, and there's a good chance we could be this year, officially after the draft, the youngest team in the NFL. But the thing is we are hungry. The greatness that we have building with the Russell Wilsons, the Earl Thomases, Richard Shermans, which we hopefully should have signed here any day now. We expected it before the draft, but we'll find out how that plays out. We need these three. Everything's built around these three guys, and if we can continue to bring in young guys that are hungry to compete, which is the mantra in the organization, I expect them to still be in this conversation. Granted, their schedule is incredibly difficult this year. Obviously facing this NFC West, which is just a juggernaut in itself. But as all of you, Chase had mentioned it, obviously the AFC West is extremely difficult. I think the Chiefs are going to be down a little bit, but still we're going to have to go play them in Arrowhead. That's no easy game. And then the Broncos coming here. It's probably not going to be a repeat of the Super Bowl, but hey, it's still in our house. And the Chargers, we're going to get to play them here. I shouldn't say that. We're going to have to go play them down there. That's not necessarily the hardest place in the world to play. So, it's still a tough schedule, and it's, I think right now, it's 6th right now voted by the NFL, whoever makes that decision. The point is this team's still going to be ready to go. They have Russell Wilson really has an iron hold on this team's preparation model, and everybody really is looking towards him. And he's still a quiet leader, which is interesting. It's just he does it by representing his actions and getting the work done, and everybody really answers to it. I really am looking forward to seeing these guys lace it up. I think we'll be ready to go. All right, last topic of the night, guys, and again, share with me what you want, but I want you guys to tell me and tell our audience what's unique about your fan base. Obviously, my fan base here in Seattle is very unique with the 12s and how we are so loud in our stadium. But, I think it's important for all of us to get an idea of what is it like. All of us here go to the games. We know what it's like in our stadium, but share with the whole audience here what it's like to be in that environment. And we'll start with you, Dennis.
All right, great. I just hope Chase wouldn't mind if I respectfully disagree with his assessment of the opening day. So I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. What makes Jet fans, the fan base, unique is that when you wear the green and white, I mean, it's like a bonding experience. It's like your brother. I mean, when you wear the green and white, I mean, the Jets have had everything happen to them but win a championship over the last 40 years. They've had some success. They've had some playoff success, some down times. I mean, it's not like they've gone 15 years without making the playoffs or haven't won a playoff game in 15 years like some teams floating around out there. But you know what? The Jet fans have seen everything except for a championship. We've seen the butt fumble. We've seen the fake spike game. You name it, we've seen it. We've seen everything. We've seen late season collapses. We've seen playoff victories on the road against great quarterbacks. We've seen it all. That's why I like Rex Ryan, by the way, because he's won playoff games on the road where the quarterback of the team was definitely superior to Mark Sanchez. But that's what makes our fan base unique, that band of brothers, I like to call us. And when you wear the green and white, you look at your brother over there, and you definitely tip your cap to them. Why we're the best to follow is because we're never dull. Look, the Jets are never dull. We're in the New York market. We got the New York media breathing down our necks. We have Woody Johnson is kind of a conservative guy, but yet he's always in the news. And he's actually a really nice person, walks around the parking lot, takes pictures. He's a billionaire. The guy's a billionaire. But you know something? One thing about Woody Johnson is Brett Favre. Look at some of the moves he made. Brett Favre. He was going into a new stadium. I think he meddled a little bit. And one thing we learned from Jerry Jones and the late Al Davis, sorry, Chase, is that owners don't make good GMs in general. So Daniel Snyder, for example. So Woody Johnson meddled a little bit. I think when Mike Tannenbaum had some pressure on him, I want to fill seats, and that kind of forced Mike Tannenbaum's hand to build in this aggressive style that ultimately led to the demise of this team, bringing in John Idzik, who brings this very patient, pragmatic approach. But like I said, even though John Idzik has put the clamps on a lot of these media leaks that were happening under Tannenbaum, it's still never a dull moment with our New York Jets, even if the stories are made up. And quite frankly, a lot of this stuff in the New York media are complete fabrications. I know people within the organization. I know the truth, which is why you should listen to Let's Talk Jets on the Blog Talk system, because that's what we give you, the truth. We consider ourselves the Truth Squad.
Shameless self-promotion there.
Yeah, but it's
you got to get it out when you can.
It's okay. Jacob, hit me up. What do you got to say about your Packers?
Yeah, no argument, Dennis. Shameless self-promotion is definitely a good thing. But as far as the Packers go, the fan base, what makes them unique is obviously everybody talks about the Ice Bowl, the cold weather games. People are out there braving the elements. It's Lambeau Field. It's one of the most, historical stadiums in the entire country. Everybody I've ever met has always said, well, if I haven't been to Lambeau, that's the one place I want to visit before I'm all said and done. And one thing I think that is really cool about the fan base is the fact that I think Jim McMahon said it best one day. He said the Packers have a bunch of owners that nobody knows instead of one owner that doesn't know anything. And the Packers are, owned by the team. They're not officially represented by that guy. They're represented by Mark Murphy. But, you can buy stock in the Packers, and they have a bunch of unofficial team owners. I think that's a cool bonding experience with the fans. A lot of people, that band of brothers thing is very prevalent here in Green Bay as well. People park at other people's houses to go to the game. You give them about $20. You let them park on their lawn. They'll let you grill and tailgate and all that fun stuff there. They let them in your house to use your bathroom and all that sort of stuff too. So it's kind of a cool experience to see on game day all the people parking in other people's houses, partying in streets, tailgating. I remember I was up here for Return to Titletown. It was February 8th. It was probably 20 degrees below zero with a wind chill, and it wasn't even a game. It was just a celebration of the Super Bowl title, and the grills were fired up, and everybody was out tailgating at 8 a.m. for an event that started at 2. It was just a really cool experience. As far as what makes the team good to follow, arguably they have the face of the NFL, Aaron Rodgers, there. I would probably argue that it's Peyton Manning, but Rodgers is right in that discussion as well. They're in a small market, which teams tend to like. It is the smallest market in maybe professional sports. I might be wrong on that, but definitely in the NFL. They have an explosive offense that's fun to watch. Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb. In the past, you had guys like Greg Jennings and Donald Driver and James Jones, Jermichael Finley. The list of weapons goes on and on. Brett Favre was a great guy to watch for all those years as well. Dennis, I know you got a year of that, and I think he was fun to watch there as well. And, their star power, they have some big-time personalities. Rodgers, I think he's funny. Clay Matthews and B.J. Raji, you've seen their commercials, obviously. They're fun to watch. That makes them, endearing to the community. And then, you've got other stars maybe on the back end of the career, but Julius Peppers, some unknown guys like Jordy Nelson. Josh Sitton is really interactive on Twitter. T.J. Lang is too, but probably not for all the right reasons. But still, that makes a team fun to watch and fun to follow. And I think that the Packers have a really good fan base and a really good team to follow going forward, even if they aren't, very good. They're just a fun team to endear yourself to.
Chase, tell us about the black hole.
Well, obviously, the black hole, the most infamous fans in the NFL, going to an Oakland Raider game is a spectacle. Even if the team has not been in the playoffs over a decade, the fans and readers of JustBlogBaby.com are always on the site, always in the message boards. The fans of the Oakland Raiders are some of the biggest fan base in the world. They have a worldwide following. I know a lot of people over in London are excited for the game over there and saying there will be a black hole in Wembley Stadium. That really just shows the scope of the Raider Nation. Everyone knows the iconic Raider Nation symbol and how the Raiders really became iconic. I know in Los Angeles for a lot of it, with all of the NWA and the gangster rap scene and just becoming that, and also having that reputation in the first place from Oakland in the AFL with John Madden and Al Davis. The fact is, without the Oakland Raiders, the NFL would be a lot more boring. There would be no Madden video game. There would be no unnecessary roughness. There would be no NFL conspiracy theories. There would be even no NFL without Al Davis and AFL. You know, the Oakland Raiders may suck to you guys, but the Oakland Raiders are one of the most important franchises in the National Football League, and that history is why everyone who is a member of the Raider Nation knows win, lose, or tie, Raider Nation till we die, and that is why the Oakland Raiders are fun to follow, and all the craziness with the Al Davis era may be tampered, but the Oakland Raiders are still fun to follow just because of the crazy fans and all of that passion to become back to being one of those historic franchises that everyone looks up to, like you guys in Seattle and the Green Bay Packers on this podcast. And sorry to the New York Jets, you suck just as much as we do.
Oh, the competitive drive between you two. It's the rivalry lives.
Well, Paul, I gotta say though, the Jets have had some success. They've had a couple AFC Championship game appearances. They've had some They've had some wins in the playoffs. I understand if you're going to count it by championships, hey, that's a different story. But over the last decade, they have had some measure of success as an organization. So I think that's got to be looked at and taken into consideration here, Chase. But I like the passion, buddy.
We got to deal with it up here. We got to deal with the 49er fans, man. They're still living in the 80s down there. So not to interrupt, but anyways, I'll just say this. I think you guys pretty much well know and have heard of the fan base, especially if you watch one of our games. What I think is unique about the 12s, and again, this whole 12th man thing. People talk about Texas A&M. That's their thing, and yeah, it is. And what is different about going to a game is that they've been doing this forever. They stand and yell. I mean, you stand the whole game. You're yelling at the top of your lungs the whole game. You will walk away from a Seahawks game literally hoarse. But the uniqueness for me is that you could be sitting next to a blue-collar, truck driver guy on your left, and on your right you're sitting next to a dot-com millionaire. And equally, you will share the passion with both of those guys and hug each other, high-five each other, and it's like you're brothers at a game. And I know that all of you here on this panel can definitely understand that with your fan bases, because I think what's unique about all of ours is that there really is like a college atmosphere at games. That's what we bring to our stadium. Again, there's the Cowboys. Everyone wants to talk about Cowboy fans. Cowboy fans sit down the whole game. It's boring. Even though they get that monstrosity down there in Jerry's World. But I think, again, when it comes down to all of our fan bases, they are unique, and there's history there. And I think that's what's awesome about all of us on this panel and our fan bases, that we have that passion. We care so much about them, but we also have respect. Granted, it might be a little bit of respect, but we have respect for one another. I got to tell you guys, I'll wrap it up, but I got to really, again, thank you for showing up tonight. I think this was a great show. This is our first time doing this. I thought it was only going to take an hour and a half. Well, guess what? We now know it takes 2 hours. So we'll plan accordingly next time. Maybe we can do this in the future, but I really appreciate you doing this special show with me, the Roundtable, talking about, again, your teams, talking about the NFL. But real quick, we'll go right back through the group here, starting with Dennis. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, again, where they can follow you, whether you're Twitter, Facebook, where your writings are online, and then we'll go down the line, starting with Dennis.
All right, well, I host a show on the Blog Talk system called Let's Talk Jets with Dennis and Tyson, my co-host Tyson Roush. You can follow that at Talk Jets Radio. Also, I do some writing for thejetsetter.com. That's my co-host Tyson Roush's website. I just kind of started there. I've been blogging with other sites on and off for the last couple of years. And just quickly to say something to Chase, the Jets did win Super Bowl III, which was a pretty important step for the AFL. putting on the same playing field as the NFL. So from a historical standpoint, the Jets did have an impact upon the merger.
Joe Willie Namath.
That's true.
Jacob.
Okay, I host a show. It's on PackersTalk.com. You can follow it. It's called From the Benches. You can follow it at From the Benches. You can follow me at Jacob Westendorf, Westendorf. And then you can always check out my writings on PackerReport.com. We have a lot of stuff up pre-draft now. We'll have a lot of stuff post-draft. I'm actually heading to Lambeau here on Thursday night. Start covering the first round of the draft. I'll be there all weekend, so I'm sure there will be a couple of sleepless nights leading through that. And one other thing, Chase, I got to give a lot of respect to the Raiders fan base because it was our team that was there after our quarterback's dad died, and they talked about how great the atmosphere was for them. So maybe a bad reputation with the black hole thing there, but a lot of respect for Favre that night. And we, at least as a fan base in Green Bay, really did notice that. So we do appreciate the Raiders and the Jets because without the Jets, the NFL wouldn't exist. So I'll give it to all you guys.
There you go.
Seattle.
There you go.
Well, we don't like you very much here right now, but I got no problem with the Seahawks. I'm a big Russell Wilson fan, and I like Richard Sherman too. So, no problem with any of the fan bases represented.
Chase.
And you can find us part of the fan-sided blog network at justblogbaby.com. My voice is running out here, guys. It was great talking football with you. Obviously, check us out on Twitter at justblogbaby or me at Chase Ruttig for any of my personal stuff. And just everyone look forward to the NFL draft. And once again, thank you for listening to us. And it was great to talk to you and having me on the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Hey, guys, thanks again. I really appreciate it. We'll stay in touch, and good luck to all your teams this upcoming Thursday, this weekend, really. And have a great draft. Get better. We will talk. I'll get all your information on my website and share it. Other than that, sign off. I'll go ahead and wrap up my show. You guys take care, okay?
Okay, thanks, Paul. Take care.
Have a good night.
Bye. Night. Well, that was fascinating. That was I think it was great insight for us here in Seattle and for everybody that tuned in to really get a idea of what other teams out there and their hosts, their radio show hosts, are thinking about. And I really appreciate everybody, Dennis, Jacob, and Chase. And again, I'll have all their information, guys, on the website, 12for12s.com, so you can learn about what they're doing, what they're providing their listener base, and talking about their team, because we all have a passion about our teams. All right, I want to do a quick shout-out to everybody here on the OOT Network, the shows that we provide. Obviously, Monday and Wednesday, you got to tune in to Tim, Barry, and myself doing the flagship OOT show, 7 to 9 Pacific time. Again, we'll have a big show tomorrow, wrapping up the NFL draft picks, our first-round picks from 17 to 32. Also, Thursday, TJ McHenry's his Nerd Sportscast, which is fantastic. Check it out. I'm looking forward to being on there sometime. Hopefully he gets a chance to invite me. And then, obviously, Adam Ungaro and the Fourth and Short, awesome show. Listen to everything on the OOT Network. We're doing our best to provide you the best in sports talk, whether it's local or national stories. Also, make sure you listen or tune in to all of our material, our content that we're providing on either iTunes or TuneIn Radio, depending on whatever operating system you use, whether it's on your phone, your tablet, or computer. We can find us there and download our show if you're not able to listen to it live on Blog Talk Radio. So, again, thank you to everybody that does that. All right, I want to, again, thank everybody, the three gentlemen, I should say. I keep thinking of the Bears guy, Gary, who didn't get here to see us. But I want to thank Dennis Agapito from Talk Jets Radio with Dennis and Tyson. Again, that's on the Blog Talk Radio. You can hear that Tuesdays at 8 o'clock Eastern, so Pacific time, that's going to be 5 o'clock. On Twitter, you can find him at Talk Jets Radio. Very easy, Talk Jets Radio. And then also you can find his partner Tyson at Trouch21. That's Trauch 21. Their website for all their material is thejetsetter.com. That's thejetsetter.com. That's SETTER. Again, all this will be on 12for12s.com, so you can find it there. Gary did a show, so he doesn't get any promotion, but that's okay. We'll hopefully have him on later on down the road. Jacob from the Packers, he does a show called From the Benches. It's part of the Packers Radio Network on Blog Talk Radio. You can find Jacob on Twitter at Jacob Westendorf. That's Westendorf. That's Jacob Westendorf. That's on Twitter. The website where he does some writing is on PackersTalk.com. Check it out. Chase Ruttig from the Raiders, Just Blog Baby. I love the name of that. They're also on Blog Talk Radio Fridays. Again, tune in. Some of these shows are seasonal. Some of them are every week. But you can go ahead and find them on there on the Blog Talk Radio. Chase is on Twitter at Chase Ruttig. That's ChaseRuttig. And also he has the Raiders Twitter handle for his Just Blog Baby, and that's Just Blog Baby. All right, for his website, justblogbaby.com, makes it easy. Again, tune in to all of the guests that showed up tonight. I think we're going to be able to do this panel show again at some point in time, again, talking about the whole NFL. I'm looking forward to it, maybe more interactive, but this was a good time. Maybe we get some viewers or some listeners to call in next time. We'll do a little call-in show. Again, you can find all of my stuff here, host moderator of this big special show for the draft and State of the NFL, on Twitter at pbizel, P-B-I-Z-E-L, Z-Z-E-L, and web, 12for12s.com. You guys all know that here that are big Seahawks supporters. Thanks again to everybody, all the people helping us on the Double OT team, Phoebes, Rachel, Joseph, Tina, all the retweets. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. All the guys down in Texas listening to us every week, every day at the Subway lunch gathering for Hawks 12. And, again, tune in to all of our material, all our content. We're sharing it on a lot of different places right now, whether it's Blog Talk, iTunes, TuneIn Radio. Also check out YouTube. I'm putting all that, all these shows with comments and guest panels, interviews, I'm putting that on there for you. And then if there's anything special, like Earl's press conference recently, I did build a video, a kind of a summary video with the audio from that press conference that really hits home. So check that out on 12for12's page on YouTube. Again, we have joined Facebook. Oh, my gosh. Check it out. I can't believe I'm on there. I promised myself I never would. Facebook. You can find me at 12for12's radio, and then also just Paul Beyer. I'm on there, and obviously more interactive with the 12for12s. That's what I'm trying to build there, so please enjoy. Two days to the draft, kids. Seahawks, big day ahead. Again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Sorry we went late, but you'll be able to catch this on the podcast later, and have a wonderful night. This is Paul Beyer for 12for12s.com and 12for12s radio. Good night. Go Hawks.
We want information. Who are you? The new number 2. Who is number 1? You are number 6. I am not a number. I am a free man.
for listening tonight. This is the end of a very long and fun panel show here on 12 for 12s. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night, and go Hawks.